Inside of these bars of wood is a secret song, and it's waiting for you to bring it out.
That's one of today's guests, Orff Schulwerk expert and master general music teacher Doug Goodkin, hinting at one of his brilliant techniques. Welcome to Music Ed Insights. I'm leadership trainer and former band director Alan Fire, here with composer and co-college music education program head Steve Shanley.
Each episode, Alan and I talk with national thought leaders in music education with practical insights for K-12 music educators.
Steve, tell us about our guests.
Doug Goodkin is an elementary music educator in San Francisco who has created a joy of music and a love of learning among his young students for 45 years. Samantha Campbell's children benefited from Goodkin's teaching, and when she heard he was retiring, she picked up a camera and made her first film, a film festival hit that is now airing nationwide. It's entitled The Secret Song and is available on PBS. Find their full bios, show notes, and resources at musicedinsights.com. Alan, what was the takeaway you had from this episode?
His two guiding questions can work anywhere. Not just any classroom, but any situation. How else can we do this? And what else can we do with this? What great tools to have at the ready. What about you, Steve?
Doug is amazing. And that's one reason this episode is a little longer than usual. We wanted every bit of wisdom we could get from him. I particularly enjoyed our discussions about jazz and also creating a refined performance product while prioritizing a warm and welcoming atmosphere for the students.
Samantha's film about Doug and his teaching is fantastic. It's a great thing to watch with your non-music teacher friends to help them see inside our world. Speaking of inside, we've had some private consultations with some of our insiders as they wrapped their school year. If you want those benefits of being a Music Ed Insights insider, head to our website to learn more. But for now, let's listen to this episode with filmmaker Samantha Campbell and master teacher Doug Goodkin.
Doug Goodkin and Samantha Campbell, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having us.
Nice to be here.
Doug, we'll start with you. First, congratulations on retiring from a long and meaningful career as a music educator, and how special to have it documented and shared with the masses via Samantha's project. One of my favorite questions for retired teachers is, what are the primary ways music education is different now compared to when you first started teaching?
First, I need to clarify that I am retired from the San Francisco school, but I am not retired. Or I am retired in my definition of putting new tires on an old vehicle and going new places.
Love it.
In the past 3 months, I've been teaching kids and adults intensive, residencies in Australia and Taipei and Macau and Tennessee and Toronto. So I'm busier than ever, happily so. In terms of what's different, I think one image comes to mind, which was around 20 years ago. A colleague of mine did a workshop, and it was such a lovely workshop. He did this wonderful singing with us and body percussion and drama. And, he was just like right in front of us. We were with him. I really got to see his musicality and the way he thinks and so on. And then he came back 10 years later and he did another workshop, and the entire thing was on PowerPoint. And so now, instead of looking at him, we were looking at a screen. And it was so unsatisfying. And I actually wrote him a letter at the end and I said, where were you? I missed you. So I think the biggest challenge is for today's teachers to clearly refuse the temptation to have everything so neatly organized on a screen and read that word and then do step one and do step two. Because for me, that is not what the Orff Schulwerk is trying to do. My best image of the Orff Schulwerk, which I didn't make up, Oriol Ferre from Barcelona gave me this image of a ping pong game. The teacher and the child both have a paddle, and that paddle is their musical intelligence. And the ball is the impulse that gets thrown out. It can be a rhythm, can be a name, it can be a sound, it can be an instrument, it can be a song, whatever it is. You throw something out and you start working with it and exploring it and doing variations with it. And it's a game of ping pong between you and the students. They come back with something, just like in that wonderful clip in the movie where the kid says, well, you were going like this, I was going like that. And that was a great ping pong moment. And I said, great, that actually made it a little bit better. as opposed to, wait a second, that was not step 3 on the PowerPoint. Pay attention to my lesson, please. So I would really like to see us refuse all screens until they do something necessary that nothing else can do. For example, show Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie playing on the Jackie Gleason show, show Hazel Scott playing 2 pianos, show the Secret Song film. That's great use of that technology. But when it comes to teaching, it's often not only not necessary, but it's distracting from what the real thing is, which is that dynamic between you and the child and the material.
Let's get into some specifics of the Orff approach. In the documentary, it was referenced that teachers should not simply just translate the original German rhymes and songs that Orff used. Rather, they should use native rhymes and songs found in their own country, such as France or South Korea. How do you approach this in America, where we increasingly have fewer, what I would call American songs and rhymes, and the traditions can vary so much, even within a city like San Francisco? Do we use this as a chance to teach students about American songs that they might not know, but we feel they should know? And if so, how do we decide which are worthy? Basically, how should we pick our material, Doug?
That's a great question. And that's one of the unusual things about being a music teacher is you have that choice, and with that choice comes responsibility. First of all, the original Orff volumes that were in German were already translated to English rhymes by Margaret Murray. So even using that original material, we're actually not using the German rhymes. We're using Margaret Murray's adaptation, where she didn't simply translate the German, but she found parallel kinds of things in the English nursery rhyme and song history. The same thing is true for the United States. We have a rich, rich folk heritage from all parts of the country, you know, the Southern folk songs and from the logging songs and from the sea shanties up around Boston and from the Tex-Mex material down around Texas. And we have a rich legacy of songs. Alan Lomax did a fantastic job, amongst other people, to collate those songs, both in written form and recorded form. I knew some of them when I began teaching, but I just got this Alan Lomax book, Folk Songs in North America, and boom, that was my starting point. But then, of course, there's the whole Black heritage. So there's, yes, Mother Goose, absolutely, don't give up on her. But then there's all the Black children's games and rhymes that lead to other places, and then spirituals and work songs and that whole repertoire material. You know, my answer is do it all. Start to give kids this heritage of folk songs that is telling them so much about the history and about the geography and about musical styles that existed in this country that they don't know because it's not out there in public media, and move on from there. I have always had a particular interest in what is conveniently called world music. So it's the same thing about taking little rhymes from Germany or South Korea or Thailand or Brazil and little games, being able to do that with simple enough text that the kids can do that, so that they're also getting this other foundation of cultures that often are represented in many places in the United States, and particularly in San Francisco. So we're really about giving them exposure to this very, very rich foundation that can be called American or related to American culture that they will not get anywhere else. And no kid has ever complained, to my knowledge.
Let's say I am a general music teacher and I am in an elementary building that's, say, kindergarten through 4th grade, and I see those kids once a week. And I'm not fortunate enough to have a K-8 general music curriculum in the district. So I'm not seeing them very much at all through the course of their 5 years with me. Where do I start with deciding, all right, we're going to teach from this part of the world, this part of the United States? I mean, we got to narrow it down at some point, right?
Some people do it according to what else is going on into the school. At our school, we had Latinx Heritage Month, you know, and then, of course, we had Black History Month. And so we were connecting stylistically to those kinds of things. I think you start with the kids that you see once a week, the same place you start if you see them 5 times a week, which is like, here we are. We have to find out what you can do with a simple thing like your name. How can we make music from your name? By the way, that's already a multicultural experience. If you have kids from different cultures, just the rhythms of the name, and then find out what the origins of the name and what is the connection historically. Are there other people, famous people in your culture with that kind of name, and so on? So that's not a bad place to start, just where the kids are at. And the other crucial thing is that you have to start with material that you love, that you're going to be willing to teach 7 times a day and not get tired of it. And then the flip side of that is, well, what if you only love the Jackson 5, and that's all you know? Then you have some responsibility to expand what you know and love and to try to give kids something else. So those two things together, keep expanding your own image of what is music, and then start with the things that you know and love, including telling kids stories about why you love it and why you know it and what it means to you. And then it means something to them, no matter who they are.
So let's say you need to go back to work full time in a general music classroom,
Yeah.
and you are dropped right into the middle of Minnesota. At that point, are you figuring out, where are my students from? What is their heritage? I'm going to try and pick some selections that might relate to what they and their families already know. Or how would you approach that? The specificities from school to school, region to region, and so forth.
It's a very deep question, because even though we think, oh, we're doing the kids a favor by finding out, oh, you come from Vietnam, or this group comes from Pakistan, whatever. So I'm going to look up in some little book, some little Vietnamese song. And their parents at home are often thinking, no, don't do this material. We want our kids to learn American material, and you don't know how to do it, and so you're going to do it poorly. So it's not a simple question in that respect. I do like to start with games and rhymes, that has a little bit less baggage to it, and see if the kids or the parents can come in and teach a game or a rhyme. One thing the film didn't show is that I do a lot of teaching around the world, and at this point up to 50 countries. So what am I doing when I go to Thailand? What am I doing when I go to China? Am I doing things from the Orff Islands? Am I doing jazz? And, what is it? And part of the answer is I do the same thing everywhere, which is this mixture of games from Mexico, from Ghana, from Southern United States, from Japan, just as a foundation, but then always encourage them to look at how we develop the material and to develop their own games in the same way. And they often share games with me, which is how I develop a larger repertoire. But it's more about what you do with the material than choosing that particular piece of material itself. Although, of course, you're looking for things. My radar is out. It's like, yes, that one. I want that one, because it has something in it that I know I can develop in an interesting way. So I kind of teach a world music curriculum no matter where I am, to tell you the truth. I really do.
So it sounds like, in your opinion, the right way to do this could look a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
I'm curious if you could give us a counter example of, well, yeah, that might not be so great. And would that be as simple as basically just too much from one culture?
Yeah. One example is that in the United States, people have leaned pretty heavily on Anglo-American material. And when they have gotten into the Black culture, it's often without a sufficient preparation or knowledge to understand how that music really works. And so they do it poorly. They miss the essence of the style. Native American is a question that always comes up, but this is a really deep question, but I essentially don't do Native American material because Native American people I've talked to don't want me to. They have not mixed the way that Black people have. So there isn't this fusion that goes on. They've kept their traditions to themselves, and that's the way they like it. But when I went to a Hopi ritual and I said, can white people come and study this with you? They said, no. They said, but we want you to know when we do it, we're doing it on behalf of all of humanity, which was such a beautiful answer. I would never say this is the way to do it. Everybody has to come to their own sense of understanding about it, but from a place of deep thought and deep reflection and deep reading and deep preparation, not just casual. Oh, because it became like this shopping at Costco. Wait a second, Diwali's coming up. I need an Indian song. Quick, anybody have one? I want it. I want it. And that's privileged white America, just saying, I need it. Give it to me so I can fulfill the cultural ratio. That's not what it's about at all. I'd much rather you do whatever, peace barge hot and do it well with kids than to go that route.
So let's talk a little bit about improvisation. In my experience, I feel like the word improvisation and the experience of improvisation has sort of been co-opted by the jazz musicians. And then within the jazz musicians, it's been kind of taken over by the beboppers. And so what we have now is this idea when a lot of people, especially those who got trained in colleges and universities in America, hear the word improvisation, they think about chord changes and Charlie Parker, and everything is very difficult and you have to know lots about music theory. And of course, this is not the case, that improvisation existed for thousands of years prior to Charlie Parker, but that's where we are in the United States right now. And so I was excited to see some clips in the documentary of you playing jazz piano and then learning a little bit more about you, that you've written some texts about teaching jazz in an elementary setting. So I'm curious, how can we make jazz less scary for teachers? Because when I encourage anyone, and especially it feels like elementary general music teachers, to incorporate this, they think, oh, no, I never played in jazz band. I don't play gigs. I can't do that. How do we break into this?
The simplest and most powerful answer is everybody listening needs to come to my jazz course in New Orleans this June. Hurry up and sign up, because that's what the whole thing is about. I wrote a book called Now's the Time, Teaching Jazz to All Ages, which I published in 2004. And 20 years later, it's still the time. The point of that book is to leave off where other jazz things begin, because even though jazz is associated with improvisation, the way it's taught in the United States is not necessarily friendly to improvisation. Mostly people are learning jazz in a very Western-centric way, where you pick an instrument, you practice by yourself, you take a lesson, you read the chart, and you learn the scale, and you try out the scale, which is not how jazz musicians learn to improvise. They were dancing, they were doing body percussion, they were like leaning over the piano at the juke joint and seeing what people were doing. They were at church where there was such a flow of improvised singing. So it's a very Western-centric thing, where many people who played in jazz bands, if they come to my jazz course, they say, well, I play clarinet, but I don't improvise because I tried once and the band teacher told me to put it away, So I am the officiant at the marriage between Orff and jazz. And it's the most beautiful marriage because they share so much in common. They both begin in the body, they begin in the ear, they begin with simple little phrases that then you could develop. They begin with simple scales that can sound great with just 3 notes or 4 notes or 5 notes, At the end of this book, you're ready to go to the high school jazz band. Meanwhile, you have to come into it through the body, through the clapping plays, through the games, through the singing, and improvising, every step out of the way, improvise your name, Shabuya, Shabuya, roll call, my name is Doug, I like to play. I play piano most every day, roll call, and it's like already there's a verbal improvisation, and then there's a movement improvisation, and then there's body percussion improvisation in the way that we do things in the Orff classes. So it's accessible to everybody. And in these jazz courses, I have very high-level jazz musicians who never tried to dance or do body percussion, and they're suffering. They look like they're in kindergarten, but then when they put that trumpet in their mouth, it's like Clifford Brown, move over. But then I have the Orff teachers who are so comfortable with all this, and they're trying to figure out how to play a good little solo on the xylophone. And it's a beautiful mix because everybody has their place of comfort and discomfort, and there's no competition. Everybody is there to help each other out. So for me, the genius of the Orff jazz marriage is to come into jazz from a different doorway than the usual, here's the tune, read the chart. If you're good, solo. If you're not, don't bother.
What are we doing wrong that we don't capture the playful improvisation that exists right off the bat? There's a part of the film where it's emphasized they come to us at age 3 or 4 already musical.
And then we beat it out of them.
Yeah. Like, what is it that we do? So I appreciate that we're spending a lot of time talking about what to do. If you're willing to be a little critical of something traditional, like what is it that we do that, what was the term you used, Dr. Shanley? Beat it out of them. Like, how do we screw this up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I hope you did get the feeling that didn't happen at our school.
Correct.
That those 3-year-olds who were so musical became those 8th graders on stage who were every bit as musical as they were, but now they had some skills and different skills, and they had some techniques, and they had confidence. So I'd say a big thing is the Western definition of music and study is narrow. And obviously, it works on some level. Like if you have extraordinary talent and dedication and you're willing to do those 10 hours a day for 10 years of practicing. By the way, whether it's classical music or jazz, Charlie Parker did the same thing. You come up with some pretty exquisite music that we are all grateful for. But that's not everybody who's doing that by any means. It's like the tiny apex of the pyramid. So there's a book called Music as Social Life by Thomas Torino, where he defines two different kinds of musical communities. One is participatory and one is presentational. And participatory is like, the samba groups, the Mardi Gras groups, the Appalachian, jam sessions out on the front porch, the Ghana dancing circle, the Balinese gamelan, there are places where music is just woven intricately into the fabric of the culture, and everybody participates, even if it just means you come in and dance. You don't have to do the master drum, but you're going to come in and dance and you're going to sing. And Ghana, for sure, my experience there is absolutely that. The presentational is, music is a show, and in order to prepare for it, you have to do that solitary practice and get it right or get it wrong. And the teacher will aim for the students who have the most talent and not care about the other ones. And so that's two very different mindsets. And I'm segueing into the next question that you asked. Actually, in the Orff classroom, we actually have both, because we do spring concerts and we do shows like you saw in the movie, but it comes out of the circle of participation, and then we open the circle to the audience. So it's a very organic, natural flow. So I think the main idea is that Western music, first of all, it goes through the eye much more than the ear, which wasn't true in Bach's time and Mozart's time. They were great improvisers and ear musicians, but by the Romantic era, everybody, it was all about the score, right? So coming in through the eye rather than the ear, and coming in through the particular technique on the instrument rather than the whole body involvement. Really, the beginning of alternative music education in the West began with somebody named Dalcroze, who was teaching at a conservatory in Switzerland and noticed the students just were not musical. And so he would take them away from the piano, and he said, dance that phrase, sing that phrase, improvise around that melody you're playing, and then go back to the piano. And Orff was aware of Dalcroze's work, and there was some influence there. So he was one of the first alternative people that say, let's go from the eye to the ear and from the body to the instrument. And that you sing what you hear, and you play what you sing, and you hear what you sing and play. So this is the deep roots difference between the Orff classroom and music as those quarter notes and eighth notes that you have to just sit and read and practice. And the proof is in the taste of the pudding. Like, you could get a lot of music that way.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on teaching quote unquote standard music notation. When I was teaching high school band and middle school band and orchestra, of course, for me, the most important thing those elementary general music teachers could be doing was teaching lines and spaces and rhythms and reading that notation, because it would make my job easier. Now that I'm about 14 years removed from that, and my concerns are a little bit larger, which are, how can we just have more people love music and have it be a part of their life and so forth? The notation has become way less of an issue for me. What did that look like in Doug's classroom? Did you talk about how to read the treble clef? How much time did you devote to this is what a quarter note looks like?
Very simple answer. Notation is one of many tools that's powerful. And if kids learn it, it unleashes a power that is great. Like, I came in through notation, so somebody could put Bach in front of me and I could sight read it. And it's like, yeah, I didn't know what that was going to sound like, but this music comes out. So it's not that it's not important, but it's about how much and when and for whom. And so the fact is that when the kids come to your class, they're coming to your music class in the school because it's on their schedule. Somebody decided that they had to do some music. It wasn't them usually. So they were not signing up to become professional musicians. And so the whole thing about learning to read and write music, which is a long, tedious process, is a turnoff for them. And you can see it, in them. I mean, they'll be interested for a little bit, but it's like, okay, but where's the music? This is the paper. You're feeding me the paper. But, where's the actual music? So my answer is that if I had the kids 5 times a week, they would be much more fluent readers than they are. But I only had them twice a week. So my intention was to introduce them to notation. And the perfect example was that scene where I was teaching a Philippines piece. And there was a little melody. I was teaching it through solfege. Mi, re, mi, re, do, mi, re. That's notation. Then there was this rhythm, and I had it written on the board. Ta, 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 te, ta, 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 te, ta, ta, te, ta, te, ta, te. So they're reading this little rhythmic notation based on something called the French time-based system. And that's where you were doing improvising in the spaces. So that was a very nice example of some simple music notation that was useful to them. And, at the end of that little clip, I don't know whether you noticed, but I said, not bad for 20 minutes, yeah. Right? I had introduced that to them 20 minutes ago. And by the end, they were able to play on the xylophone what they already knew how to sing from that little notation. And they were able to play on some of the drums what we had done from that notation. So that's an example of teaching some notation that is useful, but 90% of it is just in the moment through the ear. And so in these concerts where kids play, 12 pieces over an hour, it's very rare that they're looking at a piece of paper. It's in their body. And that's part of why they're so confident, because they're not worried about, I hope I get that note right. Or they're not worried, what if my music falls down? It's right there. It's there. And I can tell you that if I see a kid that I did a concert with 20 years ago and lead them over to a xylophone, they'll play. They'll play the piece they played because it goes so deep when you go through the oral approach. And Orff did not make this up. I mean, this is true of Ghanaian music, of Balinese music, of Indian music, that there's so much depth to the oral approach. It really goes deep into the body and memory.
Samantha, I'd like to switch over to you for a minute. Your own children benefited so much from Doug's teaching that you decided to pick up a camera and make your first film, which ended up being a massive hit. Will you please tell us about your experience with Doug's teaching and making the film from a parent perspective, from a filmmaker perspective?
Sure. So it was 9 years before the film got made that I experienced the music program at San Francisco School. So I had plenty of time to watch and absorb. And I thought something different is happening here that I have not seen before in my own upbringing, in my own theater and music education experience as a kid. And I asked questions over the years to Doug and James and Sophia, the music teaching team that you see in the secret song. But not until I started to think about the importance of being together in a shared space. And the analog is a popular term for, not screens, not computers. It's touch, it's feeling, it's moving. And I felt worried for my children that they were going to have an educational experience overall that utilized screens more than I was comfortable with. And so when Doug announced that he was retiring after 45 years, I had a mild panic and thought, this is a huge event in the life of this school, in the life of this man. And I thought it was sort of legendary to document it. And then I figured, well, nobody else is asking that question right away, so I might as well go ahead and do that. I wanted to say something with the film about technology and how it has a place, but it's not everything in education, and also what music and arts education gives to kids as a means of teaching them to be human beings, and teaching them the skills to listen to each other, to respond, to be confident, to go into the unknown via improvisation, to know what they contribute to their community. There's a sense of belonging that comes from this style of education that I wanted to show in the film that really hopefully impresses upon the audience that aren't educators that kids really need a sense of belonging in order to be productive in society.
Doug, back to you. The documentary included some very impressive public performances, which is something I think we often associate with secondary ensembles like band, orchestra, or choir. And I think that we have a false dichotomy in music education of, well, those performance ensembles, we need to polish those, that making those pristine from a technical standpoint and so forth, that's very important. And then at the other end, we have general music or elementary music classrooms where we don't have to worry about that as much. And I think it's usually the case. The truth for both lies somewhere more in the middle. So I was really knocked out by those performances, and for lack of a better term, how accurate they were from a technical standpoint, the steady unified tempo and the correct pitches and so forth. How do you make that compromise? How do you keep it very welcoming for everybody, yet still get that polished product in the end?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. But as I said, the whole show begins with participatory. You throw that first ping pong ball out and you see what kind of game you're playing. And then after a month or two, it's like, well, maybe we could shape this into this. And then if we have something on the plate, like, oh, a conference is coming up, we have to put on a show, then, James, Sophia, and I get together and then think about what's the theme, or do we want to represent our middle school program, which we often do, of the mix of jazz, classical, and world music. And then you really can't start to work until you know who's there. So those were volunteer things. So kids signed up. And once you know who's there, you say, oh, wait a second, that guy plays trombone. This one would be a good singer for this. And in fact, one of the kids, I said, why don't you sing this song? She said, no, I think her voice is better for that song than me. Why doesn't she sing it and I'll sing the other one? So the kids get involved on that level too. And one thing that you would notice if you saw a lot more of the performances is that no kid plays the same instrument twice. So this is another thing. It's like you teach all the parts to everyone. And so they're hearing the music, they're feeling the music 360 degrees. They know how all the other parts work. They get sub for somebody if they need to. So, the kid who danced in this is going to sing in the next, is going to play xylophone, is going to play cello in the next. You build the things partly around the kid's interests and the kid's skills. And you never know quite at the beginning. We don't have it all mapped out. Oh, it's going to be like this. It's a very organic process until it kind of settles into, okay, we're not changing anymore. That is your instrument for this piece. Let's go. So it's a very ongoing organic process, but it's very, very important to emphasize that even if you're like a star trombone player, we're not going to put you on trombone for every piece. This idea of the kids doing all the different parts. And again, this is very typical in Ghana, which is just one of many pointed references I have. But if you go to places that says drumming, singing, dancing, the Westerners will show up and they say, oh, I'm hot. I'm going to do drumming. Oh, I'm a great dancer. I'll do that. And the Ghanaians say, no, how could you drum if you can't dance? How can you dance if you can't sing? You have to do all three of them. So this is the mentality that also you find in the Orff classroom. So we don't buy scripts. You're a good man, Charlie Brown. And we don't say, oh, the show's coming up. Okay, now we have to do this. You do this, you do. No, it grows out of that. And then James, Sophia, and I have the kids improvise scenes, and then we write the scripts eventually, but often from their improvisation.
I have a practical question for you. You teach everybody everything, all the parts. That being said, you notice that when Alan is playing the bass part, his sense of pulse is not great, and he is kind of tending to throw off the entire group. So do you figure out a way to kind of make sure when the public performance happens that, Alan isn't going to be on the bass part for that? Or how do you approach those things?
You're such a good music teacher. There are some parts that you don't just give to anybody, and the bass is one of them. So you say, okay, thanks, but, but why don't you try this over there, So, yeah, there's certain parts that, like if they double a melody with somebody else and they're not quite accurate, that's going to be okay. But the bass part, that has to be rock solid. Never give that. Don't give a cowbell part to somebody who can't keep the beat in the Latin jazz thing, So we do make those kinds of decisions.
The Secret Song is the name of the documentary film about your career, but it's also the name of a teaching strategy you use and share with the students. I hate to ruin the surprise for people who haven't viewed the film yet, because it's kind of cool to know the name of the film and sit through it and then be let in on what this secret song is. But might you please tell us a little bit about it?
So the idea is that, first of all, you start from this firm belief that every kid is musical. And then you give them a chance to prove it. So I give them a xylophone where you take off these bars to create the pentatonic scale, like the black keys on the piano. And I just set it up by telling the kids, like, inside of these bars of wood is a secret song. And it's waiting for you to bring it out, to discover it, and to share with us. All you need is a pair of mallets with hands that will bring the song out and then an ear that can hear when the secret song is singing to you, and then a mind that can remember more or less how you play it, because later on you're going to come back and share. And the kids go off into corners of the room with their xylophones, and I don't do anything. I mean, I walk around and say, "How's it coming? You want to play a little bit for me?" But they just come back with the most musical things, and some are okay, and some are amazing, and some are extraordinary. Some are very rhythmic, some are very mathematical. It's a musical proof of that idea that we are made for music, but we just don't have those kinds of opportunities, right? And then, there's a philosophical side to it too, which is not only belief that everybody has musicality inside them, but they have their own particular genius inside of them, their own particular character that the world needs and the world wants to see. And the music class is a chance for them to discover a little bit of what it might be. And it might not be in music. It might be, or it might be conducting music, or it might be drawing while people are doing music, or might be dancing. There's the other side of the Orff approach is there are so many media that it's not just learning how to play clarinet. There's dancing, there's body percussion, there's vocal percussion, there's beatboxing, there's folk dancing, and there's conducting, and there's singing, and there's Orff xylophones, and there's percussion instruments, and there's recorder. And, let's keep going. I mean, music is such a wide playground of possibility. If I could say just a couple of closing words to music teachers out there, there's two big questions that you could ask yourself that are game changers in your teaching. And one thing I hope everybody notice is this is a lot of work. What I described about James, Sophia, and I, we literally come back from a November conference having not decided the theme of the holiday play. And we sit next to each other on the plane saying, all right, let's get to work on the holiday play. What do you think we should do? So it's just like nonstop, it's just like you're thinking about it every second of every day. And we're walking downtown, especially James and Sophia, who like little props, would say, oh, look at that sword, we're going in there, just constantly thinking about the work and constantly thinking about the kids. So anyway, my two little short phrases that can change your teaching. One is, how else can we do this? Meaning, if you teach a little, clapping play, maybe by the time the kids learn it, it takes 5 minutes and you have 45 minutes left in class, so what else you're going to, so you have to come up with some variations. So can you do it slow? Can you do it fast? Can you do it with your eyes closed? Can you do it where you switch partners? Can you do it with your elbows? Just this kind of playful exploration, which is the same thing that Bach was doing with the Goldberg variations, and the same thing that Charlie Parker was doing with I Got Rhythm, chord changes, just like, how about another tune? How about this one? How about this one? And same thing, with improvising in classical music. Like I do a little shtick where I play minuet in G, and then I say, okay, change a little bit about the right hand, change a little bit about the left hand. You're sad, can you do it in minor? You're going to Turkey. Can you use that scale and do it in 5/4 meter? Can you transpose to E flat, to A, to D flat? Can you do a jazz style? Can you do it like Mozart? Can you do it like Beethoven? The same kind of song, but all those variations that take a lot of rigor to understand how to do those things. So the rigor is there with the playfulness. They're joined together. So how else can we do this? Or another way is, what else can we do with this? And then the most important 3 words in your life as a teacher, and I should charge extra money for this, is watch the children. Watch the children while you're teaching. And if they're happy and engaged and musical and connected and excited, you're doing some good work. If they're not, or one isn't, or 5 are, or whatever, then the work is to find out where's the disconnect. And as I said, I just feel like the work that I've done these past 3 months with kids, I'm just at the top of my game because I know what serves them. But every once in a while, well, not every once in a while, often, these kids who I've never met will do things like they'll go out of class and this 12-year-old learning how to be a tough guy will look at me and go, as he walks out, or somebody would say, thank you, just spontaneously. They're not being polite. But the best one was the kid who said, I have to get something. Can you wait a minute? So he ran off into the hall and he came back and he said, here. And he gave me this.
Let the record show we're seeing a Pokemon card. Ooh, a foil.
Special energy. Now, I don't know, Pokemon card from a hole in the wall. So I just said, okay, well, thank you. But then I went out to dinner with some people and they said, that is a special card.
Yes.
He did not just give you the bottom of the deck there. He gave you something that is a little bit rare and has a lot of power. And so, later on, I found out that that was true. So this is my honorary doctorate, not from Harvard, but from a 10-year-old boy in Macau. And I'm carrying it in my wallet now for when I need it. And since I'm sick with COVID, I do need it now. Let's see if it'll work here in a little bit. Those kinds of things. It's like everything that all that hard work and all that fun work was worth it because it reached that child. And that's what keeps us going.
It's time to bring some joy. A point that was made in A Secret Song was that there's a certain joyfulness that ceremony brings.
Yeah.
And ceremony and ritual are important in many ways. And one of the ceremonies that we treasure here on Music Ed Insights is that every guest, no matter the discipline, no matter how the interview goes, no matter what the content is, we always close with our ceremony, the lightning round, led by Dr. Steve Shanley.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, here we go, Doug. What is your favorite restaurant in the San Francisco area?
Well, it changes through the years. One is called B Star on Clement Street. That's a Burmese restaurant. Incredible Brussels sprouts and tea leaf salad and this bread called raka, I think, or rata. That's number one right now.
How about a piece of music, composer, or performer you wish more people knew about?
Well, anything by Bach. New generations know very little, I think, Keith Jarrett Trio, Louis and Ella singing jazz standards.
How about a favorite film or TV series you've enjoyed recently?
The film that I was going to mention was American Fiction, which did not do that well in the Oscars, but I love the theme of that about, do we pander down to the taste of the glory-seeking, thrill-seeking American culture, or do we write to the level of our own integrity? So I thought that was a powerful film.
How about the most memorable live music performance you've attended?
One amongst many was Bobby McFerrin, Chick Corea, and Jack DeJohnette improvising. They were doing a whole evening of Secret Song collectively. And, Bobby McFerrin would sit down and play piano. Chick Corea would sing. Jack DeJohnette would play piano. But they'd also play drums, piano, and voice. And they had no map. The map was which sound was the next needed sound. And that was exquisite.
And finally, a book recommendation for our listeners, please.
Well, first of all of my books, they're the best. Jazz, Joy, and Justice, Teach Like It's Music, think Now's the Time, Teaching Jazz. But recently I read a book called The Myth of Normal, which is a really sobering but important look at where we are it's called Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture.
This is Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate. So
Okay.
He just did a really, really nice job compiling all the evidence that we are in a toxic culture, and at the same time giving some little signs as to where the healing might come from. And this kind of music education, from my point of view, is certainly one of the healing tonics that we need.
Samantha Campbell and Doug Goodkin, thank you so much for joining us today. Love the film. Hope our listeners watch the film, and thank you for creating it for us all. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. You were great questions, great interviewers, and hope we meet someday.
Thanks for listening to Music Ed Insights.
We're supported by Group Dynamic, a leading provider of youth leadership workshops. Alan works with dozens of schools each year to help develop their leaders. Learn more at groupdynamic.net/youth-leadership.
Or you could email me at alan@groupdynamic.net. Also sponsored by the Co-College Music Education Program. They've got a website too.
Just click their link at our website or email me at shanley@coe.edu.
Also, The Normal Design, helping normal companies and people create memorable, meaningful, and professional designs and branding. More at thenormaldesign.com.
And Winterset Websites, website design and maintenance. wintersetwebsites.com.
Our Facebook page is Music Ed Insights.
Our website has program notes, links, and a one-page download of this episode's key takeaways. That's musicedinsights.com.
New episodes generally drop every couple weeks on Monday.
Get current.
Stay relevant.
Music Ed Insights.